Hey everybody, my name is Eli Cantor. I'm a licensed real estate agent here in the beautiful state of California. And today is the first video of a multi-part series I'm going to be doing on the basics of real estate. Today I'm going to be talking about the mortgage and the deed of trust, what the two have in common, what they differ in, and exactly what these things are. So let's get into it. Now let's define what a mortgage and a deed of trust are. Both basically have the same primary purpose in that, in technical terms, they are legal agreements governing the lending of funds for the purchase of real property, while also creating a security interest in that real property. And now, to put that in simpler terms, this is basically an agreement between the lender and the borrower when the lender issues funds for the purchase of a property, and the lender needs something to fall back on in case the borrower defaults. The lender wants to mitigate their risk, and so the lender is going to put some sort of interest into the property, some sort of stake, like a lien, or they're going to hold title. We'll get to that in a second. But this is basically going to protect them in the case of borrower default. Now, a mortgage involves two parties, the lender and the borrower. The lender is known as the mortgagee and the borrower is known as the mortgagor. But a deed of trust is different. A deed of trust has three parties. You have your trustor, your trustee, and your beneficiary. The trustor is the borrower, the trustee is a neutral third party, and the beneficiary is the lender. Now, in a mortgage, the borrower takes out funds for the purchase of a property, and the lender puts something called a lien on the property, which is basically a stake or a claim in the property that's going to protect them and allow them to act in the case of default. Now, in a deed of trust, just like a mortgage, you have your borrower, who in this case is the trustor. They take out funds. You have your lender, who gives funds to the borrower. But then you have this neutral third party. What do? So the neutral third party holds what we call legal title, okay? The borrower goes, buys this property. They get something called legal title, which is full 100% complete, clean title. But legal title is then given to this neutral third party. So then what does the buyer have? What does the borrower have? They have something called equitable title, which is the right to possess the property, to treat it as if they fully own it. But in reality, the legal title, which is complete and full ownership, is held by this neutral third party, okay? The lender doesn't hold it. The lender also doesn't have a lien on the property. They give legal title to this neutral third party. And what this does is if the borrower ever defaults, if the borrower breaches the contract in some sort of way, the lender is going to tell that neutral third party, okay, give us legal title, we're now going to pursue some sort of foreclosure action, okay? So this neutral third party is kind of like an intermediary in a way. And the lender doesn't have a direct claim in the property, but if needed, they'll reach out to this neutral third party, if the borrower defaults or something like that. They'll take legal title and pursue foreclosure action. Now, speaking of foreclosure, let's talk about what foreclosure looks like in the mortgage and in the deed of trust. In the mortgage, if the lender wants to pursue foreclosure, it has to be done through something called judicial foreclosure, in which the process is basically carried out through the courts, through the government. As we all know, when bureaucracy is involved in anything, it tends to take way too long, and hence it's not uncommon, at least here in California, for judicial foreclosures to last between 2 and 3 years. It's a very tedious and inefficient process. Meanwhile, in the deed of trust, something called non-judicial foreclosure is allowed, in which the foreclosure proceedings are carried out separately, away from the courts. And hence, it's not uncommon for these to last only up to a few months. So if you're a lender, the deed of trust is far preferred because you can basically get your money back a lot quicker, you don't have to deal with bureaucracy, and it's a much more streamlined, efficient process. Now you might be wondering what states use mortgages, what states use deed of trusts. I'm going to put it right here so you can see what states use which instrument. Some use both. I know that here in California we use the deed of trust, and it was very shocking to me when I learned this because I'd never heard that before. I only heard about this instrument called the mortgage. Everyone says I got to pay off my mortgage, I just got a mortgage. And that term has basically become universally used, but in reality, if you want to get really technical, we don't even use mortgages here in California. We use this thing called the deed of trust, which hopefully you learned about today. But regardless, it's interesting to see which states use which instrument. If a state uses the mortgage, they're known as a lien theory state, as the lender puts a lien on the property. And if a state uses the deed of trust, it's known as a title theory state. So that's really it. In the mortgage, you have two parties, the borrower and the lender. In the deed of trust, you have three. You have the borrower, the lender, and the neutral third party. In the mortgage, the lender puts a lien on the property. In the deed of trust, the neutral third party holds legal title while the borrower holds equitable title. In the mortgage, only judicial foreclosure proceedings can be pursued. In the deed of trust, non-judicial foreclosure proceedings can be pursued. And then on a state-by-state basis, some states use the mortgage, some use the deed of trust, some use both. It really varies. But that's it. I wanted to keep this one short and sweet, present it in an easy, digestible way. I hope I did that. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in the next one.